Municipal Elections 2021. Know the politics and make a difference. Radio 786, 100.4 FM.
Right, we are in the swing of a debate, a special debate coming to you live here this morning from the City of Cape Town, the Council Municipal Building that Radio 786 is broadcasting live from. It's the seat of power. For this segment of our debate, gentlemen and lady, we'll talk about rates and basic services. Why in the City of Cape Town it appears that it's very difficult to get by. You have a whole host of issues in regards to rates and evaluations, property evaluations, what it costs for electricity and those sorts of areas. So that is what we'll talk about right now. And maybe just I want to start off with Fadil for this particular segment, because your constituency, Fadil, has been raising a host of issues in regards to not just being able to find homes and trying to get a home, but also the services associated with, for instance, refuse collection rates and those sorts of things, for the price of water. Talk us through what your constituency at least is reporting to you.
Well, I can tell you what my personal experience is.
Okay, go for it.
Where I live, 8 people in a household, 12 people in a household, it is not uncommon. It's the norm. Yet, our refuse is collected once a week with overflowing dirt bins, with little tip bins over there that are overflowing because the city does not collect on time. But when you cross the railway line from Bergfleet onwards, where 2, 3, 4 people live in a household, refuse is collected timelessly. There's no dirt. There's no clutter. There are 2 levels of service there every year. One for the rich, one for the poor. But as far as property tax is concerned and property rates is concerned, on a rand per square meter, I am paying the exact same amount as a person living in Constantia. That the City of Cape Town caters for the privileged. There's no hiding that. There's no running away from it. How can I, as a human being, look my neighbor in the eye, knowing that she's too poor to pay this exorbitant water account, and therefore water is now stuck to a drip system? You know, we've taken the extreme step where we start reconnecting water because this is inhumane. And that the DA runs City of Cape Town, the answer to the water crisis just a few years ago was to try and sign a contract with an Israeli company for desalination. And then there's the rumor that the DA was to get 600 million rand back as a kickback towards this election. That the water crisis, we believe, was constructed in order to get money to run this election. Now,
what does that mean? That was constructed for the election. Are you saying they fabricated a drought?
Day zero was never going to come. Everybody knows this. It was one massive campaign to make us believe that something was coming that was never there. This is not a water-rich province. Let's not lie about it. But was there ever a true drought? Water's always been scarce here. But has it ever been worse than it was that year?
Okay, I struggle with that, to be honest with you, Fadil, because look, there was a drought. One cannot deny that. What perhaps the question I want to pose, and as we get into this, is whether or not, as a consequence, the DA deliberately in council had, for instance, tried to even further punish people by coming up with a levy that was attached to it, and that levy that is still sticking around till today, even though water sources have been replenished, right? So I want to come back to that issue. So peg that in for us there, please, Councillor Badruddin. Let's go to Fiona on water. I'm going to come back to you, Fadil, on water and taxes in the City of Cape Town.
Yes, it's clear that the city has a two-tail. It's a two-tail city. The city has been giving exceptional services to leafy suburbs. You see clean streets, you see amenities. You even see dog parks. You see where they even walk their dogs. While in the communities where we are from, you don't even have proper parks. Let's go to your water tariffs. You are correct when you make your analysis. Our dams are 92% full, but still people are paying pipe levies. A pipe levy that was supposed to be a drought levy. And remember, we fought We fought for the drought levy not to be implemented, so now it changed to a pipe levy. It's high tariffs that the communities can't afford.
Ja.
Kom ons kyk gou na die electricity tariffs, die debt management policy wat geïmplementeer word. Ek ken in Atlantis en in Mitchells Plain en in Bontewil's aunties wat literally huil oor electricity. Hulle gaan koop R50 se krag, dan kry hulle literally 3-4 units, want hulle debt word daarvan afgetrek. Daar is regtig in jou myn. As jy gaan om jou water te gaan reconnect, jy gaan municipality, jy wil eintlik reëlings gaan tref, dan kan jy nie voordat jy nie 'n bedrag neersit nie. Nou, as die auntie nou klaar die kraggeld en kosgeld het, waar kry hulle nog die geld om die reëling te tref, net om die water reconnected te hê? En dit is die reality. Daai is wat gebeur. Ons het gesien die afgelope tyd die protest deur civil society en communities against it, because hulle het gesien hoe staan mense in queues voor die rent office net om 'n reëling te maak. Old aunties, disabled people standing in queues for days, coming back the next day and the next day just to make an arrangement, just to have water reconnected. And that is the real city. You don't see that queues in Botasig or in Sea Point. You don't see it. There's just a difference. Just look at the development now recently. Table View is getting a beach walk, a beach front for 252 million, while in Atlantis they only spent 200,000 on development. So that is really the comparison.
Okay. Brett Heron, for good, what is your assessment on where the priorities of the city lie in regards to municipal services?
Well, I thought we were talking about the high cost of water and electricity.
Yes.
And that is a reality that I've seen wherever I go. I mean, if I go campaigning, I get to the first house, and by the time I come out, there are 20, 30 people in the streets with water and electricity water bills
Yes.
that they're unable to pay, or where they've been disconnected. And that's how you may recall last week's story about Mr. Arifdeen in Tafelsig, who had his furniture attached. They were going to take his furniture to pay a water bill. Now, electricity and water should never be so unaffordable. I mean, it's a basic service. We're all entitled to it. You should never be totally disconnected. And the cost of it should never be so unaffordable that they can take your furniture. And when they've sold your furniture, they don't raise 88,000 Rand, which they're unlikely to ever do by selling second-hand furniture. They'll take your house for a water bill. This city has lost all sense of priorities completely. The basic services we must deliver to every household is water and electricity. And when you're unable to provide that at an affordable price, then you have lost the right to really govern the city. You shouldn't be governing the city if you cannot look after the people who are most in need and who cannot afford water and electricity. I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. The electricity, for example, this is a point I wanted to make. What the city is doing, I think, is illegal. They are collecting debt via the prepaid meter system. And that's an illegal process, because as a debtor, you don't get the opportunity to dispute to the city that you owe them the money. They just take it. And if in a debt collecting process, the debtor always has the right to dispute that they owe the money. But in this process, you go and buy your units, and they deduct according to what they say you owe them, whether you owe to them or not.
Which is a point that I really want to pick up on as we go to Dr. Zaid Badruddin. There was the good political parties, Brett Heron. Let's go to the ACDP. How do you concur that there are a host of issues that makes it feel as if, though you said with two types of cities, that caters for two different people?
Absolutely there is. I've been saying in council for years now that the city is an unaffordable city to live in. All the councillors will know that. We've been talking about this for many years. The budget priorities are wrong. And as Brett says, if you get hounded out of your house because the city is spending over 200 million Rand a year on debt collectors, and their sole purpose is to recoup whatever they can from people who cannot afford to pay because the prices that they're having to pay is too much. We've been saying this for years. What the city does fundamentally, which is wrong, is that they decide what they want to deliver, and then they look around to see where they can get the money from, right? And they immediately raise rates, taxes, and services. So water has gone up by over 400% in the last 15 years. Electricity and the rates increases have gone up by over 150% in the last 10 years. So people cannot live in the houses anymore, and they're getting hounded out of their houses to run away from the debt collectors, which the city is incessantly harassing them with. It happens all day, every day. 300 million rand on debt collectors every single year is being spent. We, as the ACDP, want to make the city an affordable city to live in. Water and electricity is a basic service. We all have the right to access it. And as others have said, we cannot be taking, if you owe on the water, you cannot be paying electricity, buying units, and then you're paying off your debt and you're not getting the electricity units. All of these things are not consulted with the people either. The city doesn't go and consult with the ratepayers and find out what they feel about it. They don't ask. They give you a 2,000-page budget, and they give you a draft budget. They give you 1 month to look through it, and then they ignore your comments anyway, right? So, when we're talking about including the ratepayers of Cape Town in the decisions that affect them, the ACDP has been saying we want a 60-day public participation period, and we want education of that budget to be taken to ratepayers and organizations and communities to give them opportunity to understand what they are agreeing to, what the city is about to do to them. Then we will see. And so what the ACDP is going to do, we are going to scrap the pipe levy, and in the January adjustment budget, the ACDP is going to scrap the pipe levy of 150 rand. We're going to scrap the home user charge of electricity. We're going to, at the end of the financial year, this year, and at the end of the financial year, we're going to change the way the general valuation works. Because as Fadil has been saying, people are being charged their general valuation. Their rates account is based on the valuation of their house, but it's based on the improvements as well. And so you get these anomalies of people in Grassy Park paying the same rates as the person across the line. That shouldn't be happening, because the value of the land it must be the primary
They should be paying
impactor.
more. They should be paying more. But now here's my quick response to you is the DA says, the DA Council says, that levy is to service infrastructure and pipes and things like that. If you are scrapping that pipe levy, how are you going to pay for that?
No, the city doesn't need that, and it's not used for that. It's simply so that the city can bank another couple of billion rand a year. The city's sitting with 18 billion rand in cash in bank accounts. Cash in bank accounts. That money should be spent on the people of Cape Town. The people of Cape Town should feel that money in their pockets. We need to put money back into the pockets of ratepayers. That will boost the economy, and people will be able to live in their houses, finally.
The ACDP's Grant Haskin there. Don't you feel embarrassed, Councillor? I mean, 18 billion rand that you sit within the bank, and you are charging people that they say they can't afford, rates that they cannot afford, and then you're not just charging them in that way, that when they can't afford that, you then take that money through when they buy electricity for them to survive on a daily basis. And to that extent, if they still can't pay for it, you put them out of the house or you take their furniture. It all seems very evil, actually.
So Tashrik, I think it's exactly the opposite. The city in the last year alone has written off 3 billion rand, 3 billion rand worth of debt owed to the city. And this is rather also, in addition to that, another significant amount of money in terms of the indigent funding that's made available to support the indigent and the disabled and the pensioners as well. So whilst you use words like evil, and whilst the ladies and gentlemen next to me use other words to describe this, in terms of good governance, it makes sense to be able to ensure that the city is, one, able to remain afloat, but two, also able to support those communities and those residents who aren't able to pay for the rates and the levies which are incurred upon them.
But why would you take it from when they buy electricity? Why would you put someone out of their house? Why would you attach their furniture? These things don't make any sense.
So let me answer that question. In addition to the 3 billion that I've just mentioned, we've continued to expand our indigent relief program to any person who would qualify. These are people who earn less than 7,000 rand, residents whose properties less than 300,000 rand, residents who earn less than 4,500 rand get 100% property and refuse rebates. They get 10.5 kiloliters of free water. They get 60 kilowatts per hour free electricity electricity as well. So any person who qualifies in terms of the indigent criteria is able to write off whatever debt that they may have against their name. And so it's definitely possible and not necessary for those debts to be collected, but it means then that an arrangement must be made. And this happens. Our finance department across the city, through the public participation unit, through our councillors, drive indigent grant workshops in the hearts of communities so that residents don't have to come to the civic centre or to sub-council offices for those arrangements.
Why then are so many residents having their debt being deducted through this electricity tariff? Or from the electricity tariff?
Absolutely, I think that's a fair question. The point being that even before that process takes place, a resident needs to be able to make the arrangement, one, to either access indigent grant support, or alternatively to make an arrangement in terms of how that debt will be paid off if they don't qualify for the indigent.
But the city is not true. Let me give you a real example, right, of a resident that I know in Hanover Park, who had a bill sent to her, a bill that she wanted to dispute. She was told she can't dispute the bill. She first needs to make a payment on that particular bill before any agreement can then be made. What has happened in the process is that resident has had her electricity completely switched off for 3 years now. So it's not entirely true to say they must come and make an arrangement. They must come and make an arrangement on the basis that they must pay something. So it's not entirely true.
So to add to that, I would again disagree with you very respectfully. I take the point about not necessarily making an arrangement before a service is shut down. There are councillors, and the Deputy Mayor himself, as the MACO member for finance, will be the first person to tell you that the city should not turn off the water for residents, especially in the times of the pandemic. We've not done this, and where it has happened, and it's been brought to the attention of the politicians, that has been very quickly remedied as well. So we know that we can manage those officials on the ground that do what shouldn't be done. So in terms of having access to basic services, 100%. We as the City of Cape Town offer the most basic services to more people than any other city in this country. We offer it at the lowest rate than any other city in this country. We've increased the rate at the lowest rate again than any other city in this country. Yes, there may be issues in our community that must be addressed. I will be the first person to share my contact details to help those residents in order to make arrangements. But the fact of the matter is, Tashariq, that 40% of households receive the largest water and sanitation allocation in our country for free. 40% of our residents in the city receive the largest water and sanitation allocation in our country for free. And so I just wanted to add, apparently a drought never happened or wasn't about to happen, but our dams were extremely empty. Day zero was about to happen. And so what needs to be appreciated here is the fact that the tariff in terms of water is not dependent on how full your dam is.
No.
Let me explain.
That is what you guys did.
Let me explain.
Can we respond?
I'll give you an opportunity to
So no
respond.
matter how full your dam may be, the tariff is dependent on how much water is being sold. And understandably, because of the drought...
How? If you're selling more water, you're making more money. So why would you make an additional tariff?
We're not selling more water. We're selling less water.
So you're punishing us for selling less water?
We're not punishing. We're not punishing. So I really must address
let's give him a fair opportunity to respond.
the use of the word punish and evil. Because we're not punishing. No matter how full your dam may be, the tariff is dependent on how much water you sell. So because we've gone through significant years in terms of water saving measures, using buckets, not flushing and washing dishes in water that you save from the rain, the city has sold less water. The city, though, still does have a responsibility to look after the infrastructure. The infrastructure can't be allowed to collapse. And so in terms of our water strategy in the city, we must make sure that there's safe access to water and sanitation, that in terms of pricing regulations and education programs, we must make sure we're at the forefront of leading when it still comes to responsible water behavior. And also we must make sure that there's sufficient and reliable access to water. And so part of the funding that is generated through this, the water tariff, ensures, one, that we're able to make sure that our infrastructure remains intact, but to invest in our water future as well.
Just one question quickly. Councillor Badruddin, to be fair, right, the levy did not come about 6 years ago. The levy came about when the drought happened, and the council told us that levy was meant to assist in the reticulation and all of those things, and particularly to pay for desalination plants and things like that, those infrastructure. Yet that levy remained, and then all of a sudden the levy was then told for something else. It was said it was for something else. So I don't think you're being entirely honest with us when you're saying that it's now for infrastructure. When has it changed? Why has it changed?
So it's always been the case, Tashariq. I think in terms of how it's communicated and how it's understood clearly, even between us, it's a confusing matter, as we can see. But we've heard now one of the panelists next to me saying that we will scrap the fixed charge, but he doesn't tell you where he's going to find the money to do a number of things, to cover the cost of bulk water, the treatment of water, the delivery of water to homes, and the maintenance of the infrastructure, which the water tariff as a whole looks after. So where will this money come from, Tashriq, if the fixed charge is removed? It means that other rates will have to be expanded. And as a DA and as a City of Cape Town, we don't want that. We want equitable and fair access to basic services like water and electricity.
Fiona, let's go Fiona for the ANC.
Yeah, it's good to name lots of numbers, percentages, but it doesn't reflect on the ground. If all of these people now qualifies for the grants, for making arrangements, so why do we have queues and queues of people all over the city standing in front of municipal offices? And you are correct that you first need to pay to make the arrangement. So if the auntie doesn't have the 1,500 to make the arrangement, you will be without water. He still did not answer why they are deducting it from electricity. The other one is also that I had one lady in Atlantis, all her debt were written off. She was excited.
Say it
she
again.
showed me here, my debt has been written off.
Yes.
The very next month, her first bill was 1,800 for the usage of water. So now immediately you are getting that money back. It's not affordable. So you are writing off and you are punishing in the same breath.
No, that's not how it works.
No.
Yes.
But that is the truth.
Brett, how does it work? Brett, let's go.
And the last one is, you spoke about the 350 free water that you are getting. In fact, die mense van die Kaap moet 'n emmer onder die kraan sit en hy gaan drup, so daai 350 gaan by the way 'n hele maand vat om hy emmer vol te drup. So small is the little drop that's coming out of the tap. So they are in actual fact disconnecting people's water. Now they want to say, no, we've not disconnected. There's a drop coming out. But that drop, they need to leave the bucket there for days just to fill up.
Yeah. Brett Heron for the Good Party.
Well, look, I think we must also be clear that not, even on the trickle system, as they call it, for most people, no water comes out the tap, zero. So they are completely disconnected. Councillor Badruddin is not being honest. The water and sanitation system always operated on the consumption charge alone. The pipe levy was introduced to support what was anticipated to be lost revenue during the drought because people would be using less water. So it was intended by the mayor at the time to be a temporary charge that would only be used during the drought when the water consumption, when we were all asked to use less than 50 litres a day. But this is a very good example of how an individual cannot make a decision, because it was the DA caucus who implemented the pipe levy. And even in the council on the day when the pipe levy was adopted, Patricia de Lille spoke out against the caucus decision. She said she is pleading with council not to implement this pipe levy to protect those families who are using less than 50 litres of water a day and to protect large households. The very next day, the DA started disciplinary processes against her for breaking a caucus decision, and what they did was launch a motion of no confidence in her for breaking a caucus decision, for speaking out against the caucus. So she wanted a temporary levy for the drought because there was going to be a drop in the consumption revenue, but it was meant to end when the drought ended. And if you want to see why it's not necessary, just look at the financial management reports of the city. By 2019, they had collected 4.4 billion rand in over-recovery on water charges. That currently sits at almost 9 billion rand. So in that 18 billion rand of cash that's invested in the bank, 9 billion rand is over-recovered from water charges. This means that the city budgeted for a certain amount of revenue from water. They've reached that amount, and they've over-recovered by 9 billion rand from that fixed pipe levy. So we can scrap it, as Grant was saying, and we must scrap it.
Yeah. Grant Haskin for the ACDP. How are you going to pay for it is what Councillor Zaid asked. And as Brett just said now, that it always came just from the user levy, the user charge. But now you're suggesting let's scrap it altogether.
Absolutely, we can scrap it. We don't need that pipe levy. It was introduced only for a short period of time. Look, the ACDP voted against it anyway, but it was told to us that we were going to introduce it just for a period until the drought is over. The fact is that the drought should have and could have been avoided by the city. It was the city's responsibility anyway to avoid a day zero. It came upon us because of the city's inability and unwillingness to spend money to protect our water reservoir resources that we have. Our bulk water, which the city runs. The city has a bulk water department which manages the water from our dams into our taps. The city has underspent on its investment in repairs and maintenance and new facilities for years, for 10 or 15 years. They have underspent, in a 10-year period, they underspent by 720 million rand just on repairs and maintenance on dams and reservoirs in the city of Cape Town. So we wonder why we had a water crisis. The pipe levy should have been scrapped immediately, but now the city's got a cash cow. Now the city can afford to introduce all of these nice new sexy projects that we're going to start seeing because of all of this money that they've got. Meanwhile, people can't afford to live in their houses anymore. They can't afford to pay the water. What the city does fundamentally wrong is they say that council must set the rates and the service charges to generate sufficient revenue to match the proposed expenditure. So the proposed expenditure is thumbsucked by the DA caucus. They decide all of these nice things that we want to produce and we want to show the city of Cape Town. It's unaffordable. And so then to fund that, they've got to raid the ratepayers with money, with debt collectors, with queues, and they've got to cut the services so that they can get the income so that they can afford all of these projects. We've got to change that budgeting process around. We've got to say to ourselves, what can the ratepayers of the city afford to pay? Therefore, what will our income be? What will our revenue be? Okay, now that we know that, now let's spend according to that which we have available, guaranteed. And so that we don't get over collections on rates, electricity, etc.
And sit with 18 billion rand in the
Correct.
bank account. The Grant Haskin there for the ACDP. Fadil Adams.
I don't have much to add. I've been listening to Councillor Badruddin speak for about 5 or 10 minutes on the issue and he hasn't answered a single question. I'm in agreement that it has been extortion. The city has written off 3 billion rand, according to Councillor Badruddin. Our question is, how much of that was written off for the poor and how much of that did big business benefit? Because our understanding of that write-off was it wasn't only for residential people who profited off day zero. Their water arrears were written off as well. And this is what we find hurtful. That to this day, we still take water, bottles of water, to pensioners at night to enable them to take their medication.
Yeah.
I should have brought the grommet with it. We've taken out. We've taken out this grommet so you can see the size of the hole where the water is supposed to come through. It is like a needle spin. And these people are expecting us to live off this. And they're telling us that it's for our own good. Now you have to explain to me how a family of 15, 10, 8 is supposed to exist of 350 litres of water per day. Proudly brought to you by the DA run City of Cape Town. I'm one of those people that had a leak that I didn't know about. It was underground. When I went to the city to make an arrangement to pay, I was told I needed to put down 25% of 30,000 rand before I can make an arrangement to pay. I had to pay that money. I was in a position to pay that money. But you know what? There's a million people out there who can't. And people like the man right next to me are telling me that this is how it's supposed to be. That there is no other way. 18 billion rand in cash reserves. No shame and no relief.
Yeah.
I'm not done, Tashrik.
Okay.
In the middle of that day zero crisis,
Yeah.
his previous leader, Musi Maimani, donated water, fresh spring water, in Constantia. Not in Mitchell's Plain, not in Langa, not in Bonteville, trucks full of water in Constantia where people can actually afford to buy bottled water. I will leave it at that.
Councillor Badruddin, over to you for the Democratic Alliance.
Yes, thanks, Tashariq. I wish I was Fadil, where I could say things and not really be held account to what I'm saying with no evidence really to say anything.
You're able to
But
respond to it.
No evidence.
what I want to say is that it's incorrect again to say that I, as a leader in the city of Cape Town, as one of the leaders within the DA, is saying that this is how people must live. Fundamentally, I must disagree with that. Absolutely. I'm saying that the city has a number of opportunities available to residents who cannot afford either the rates that they have previously used and cannot pay on, or those who cannot make use or pay on future rates as well. This is called our debt write-off program. I've given you the figures around that, 3 billion rand. Also included there is the indigent support, which we're expanding on a year-to-year basis already. So those residents who can't afford to pay these levies, by the way, which are the lowest of any city in this country, if they can't afford to pay, the city of Cape Town supports them to be able to ensure that they can access these basic services. And I want to agree with what is being said with me in terms of shouldn't being allowed to queue outside city offices. And again to this, the city takes programs into our communities where residents are supported by finance department to be able to do that from a community hall. It takes a councillor like Fiona perhaps to drive this in a community so that residents from as far as Atlantis, Mamre and Pella don't have to come all the way to the sub-council or the civic centres. And so the responsibility relies on those councillors too. But I want to say that there's a suggestion here that the city is collecting a profit, as is being said, and that's not the case. The city has put forward an extensive plan when it comes to infrastructure development, bulk infrastructure development across our city, to be able to increase and expand our ability to deal with growing demand on this service. That has already been presented. This has gone through a number of participation processes, and simply to add that in terms of the funding that is being available, not profit, but money that's allocated to projects, by 2030 the city plans to be able to produce 300 million litres of water a day. This taken from groundwater abstraction, water reuse and augmentation programs that is being driven robustly at the moment. Not this nonsense about failed desalination plants that the previous mayor again can put on her record.
The DA government, not the previous mayor.
No, the previous mayor as an executive mayor has the ultimate authority in a local government. And if you don't know that now, colleagues, then you shouldn't be coming to council. Yes, guidance is taken from the council, but the executive mayor is the ultimate custodian of decision making in the city. Yes, we make the decisions
guys, can we have some order very quickly?
You know.
On that point, if you're saying that it is then the DA mayor and so on, the former mayor that made these decisions, can you then concur with what Brett Heron said, that when she went against council decision, when she pushed for the foreshore project, when she went against the pipe levy and all of those sorts of things, that it was then that a motion of confidence was taken against her and she was effectively removed by the DA?
Let me tell you about the foreshore project.
No.
Let me tell you why the city needed to take action against the previous mayor.
About the water tariff.
No. It was introduced. The foreshore was introduced, and I'm taking the opportunity. The foreshore project, together with the other five land parcels, showed irregularities that were found by the city manager that is out of keeping with city regulations, irregularities that this mayoral candidate for the Good Party had his own hands in together with the previous mayor. And so for that reason, those contracts needed to be cancelled, because the city of Cape Town certainly won't engage willingly, intentionally in irregular expenditure or irregular contracts. So we needed to rid ourselves of those individuals who were driving those processes.
And the water levy?
In terms of the water levy, as I've mentioned, the levy is not linked to the amount of water in the dam. The levy is linked to the amount of water that is being sold.
The levy is linked to, but the motion of no confidence issue.
Yes, so it's easy, Tashariq, it's easy to say that the levy was meant to be temporary.
No,
it was.
I'm getting to the answer. It's easy to say that the levy was meant to be temporary, but what I've shared with you now is that still to this day, and thankfully, Cape Townians are still saving water. Therefore, it is irresponsible to say that we must get rid of a levy that ensures we're able to look after our water infrastructure, a levy that's going to be able to make sure that we are able to deliver.
This man is
300 million
saying, this
litres
man
of
is
water
saying
a day
that it
by
is irresponsible
2030,
to
by
relieve
by
the
2030.
punitive taxes
No,
that
let's not
they've
use the word
implemented.
punitive.
That's what he's
Let's
saying.
not use the word punitive.
Let's-
That's also
we have to wrap
irresponsible.
Evil, that's what it
That's
is.
fear-mongering and you're evil for saying that.
Gentlemen, can I
Can I
can we have
finish
some
my
can we
point?
have some order, please? Right, we have to wrap off on this round. Brett, I want to come to you quickly.
Can I
As a
finish my
response, very
point?
quickly.
Can I finish my point?
2 seconds, very
Yes.
quickly.
So in terms of the water levy, yes, absolutely. We need to make sure that we're still able to gain the income from the water levy in order to invest in our infrastructure. And any person sitting next to me to my left is being dishonest when they say they can scrap the water levy without that having an impact on other rates and tariffs. They are not saying that, and that is dishonest.
Brett Heron for
it's
the
absolutely
party.
affordable.
Yeah, look, Tashreeq, first of all, it's not dishonest to say you can't scrap the water levy, the fixed pipe levy.
Where will the money
we
come
have
from, Brett?
operated the water system for 100 years without a
Without that.
fixed pipe levy.
Without that
And the fixed
levy.
pipe levy was introduced, meant to be a temporary
We're
drought
selling less
levy
water now than we did
that
before.
would be scrapped after the drought was ended. So the consumption charges can carry the cost of operating the system.
No, they can't. We're
I
selling
think
less
that what
water.
what Badruddin is avoiding is confirming that when Patricia de Lille spoke out in council, breaking a caucus decision about this pipe levy, when she pleaded with council not to implement it, even though her own caucus had decided that it must be implemented, she was disciplined by the DA, and there was a motion of no confidence drafted by J.P. Smith, but tabled in the name of Mersha Klainsmith, which refers directly to her comments in council, and they said she was financially reckless and that she had broken a caucus
I've said.
decision, and therefore she should be removed as mayor. And I ask everybody to go to our website, www.forgood.org.za, and read the document called The Truth About Water. The motion of no confidence is in there. It has nothing to do with the Foreshore Freeway and everything to do with this fixed pipe levy.
Fiona Abrams.
I never brought up.
You know
foreshore.
what, Ne?
Don't swear at me.
Again, he's blaming Patricia de Lille. You
Don't
know,
swear.
it seems that Councillor Barondin has forgot that Brett, Patricia, they were all part of the DA. There wasn't more parties inside of the DA. They were all part of the DA. So all the decisions with regards to water over the past 15 years is a DA decision. It's not any individual's decision. It's a DA's decision.
Grant Haskin for the ACDP.
I would agree completely. You know, the DA is quick to shift the responsibility to the individual. When it's convenient, the caucus will blame the individual, but they'll never take responsibility for the last 15 years of bad caucus decisions, even if the mayor was strong-willed and led from the front. What they will then do is, if you're leading too well, you're going to cut you off, right? Or you're going to install somebody else in their place. But the caucus is the decision-making body, and what this city has suffered with in the last 5 years, with an absolute majority of 154 DA councillors, is abuse of the ratepayers and abuse of their authority. They've abused their majority. They cannot have a majority in this council again. They must be cut down to size, and they must learn to work again with partners like they did very well in 2006, 7, 8, 9. Then it worked because they were accountable. At the moment, they're completely unaccountable.
Okay.
They're not even accountable to their own leadership.
I have to wrap up this segment. Let's do so with Fadil very quickly.
Yeah. I'm going to make a quick statement here. 3 billion rand written off in the last year. The question that I have, and it's not really a question, it's a statement, is why harass us with these high water bills and debt collectors for 4 years to write it off just before the election? You know, our lives mean more than just politics, eh?
It's not just before the election. The
It
city
is.
has written off debt over the previous years as well. It's easy to ignore that because it's
Councillor
convenient
Bandini,
to you.
can you
But
wrap
to
up,
answer
please?
the question about Patricia de Lille, I'm glad she's gone. She can go put up washing lines in other parts of the country.
That's low.
That is an interesting statement, Councillor Zaid Badruddin for the Democratic Alliance.